Hello and welcome to Smaulgld.com. Today we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to give you my point of view on what Smaulgld does and how I believe it all fits into the alternative financial media. Title of this is Fake But Accurate. This will make you think, I hope. Now, mainstream media and alternative media, two sides of the same fake news media. Now, let me explain what I mean about that. Let's go, and I'm going to start with an example of Rathergate. Now, there was a guy named Dan Rather, some of you may be old enough to remember. Back in 2004, he got caught peddling a fake story. In the story, he reported that CBS News had obtained documents that showed that President Bush had tried to avoid military service in the early 1970s. This was in the form of typewritten letters. And Rather presented these documents on air as evidence that proved George Bush had evaded the draft or had attempted to do so. And this was at a time when George Bush was running for re-election against John Kerry. Now, the alternative media did research and showed that Rather's documents were clear forgeries by pointing out that the typeset that was used in these letters was basically Microsoft Word times New Roman typeset and not the type of lettering that would be on a typewriter that would be around in the early 1970s. So Dan Rather lost his job as a result of this incident, and you have to say good on you, alternative media, for policing the mainstream media and pointing out that they will peddle a narrative if they can get away with it. Interestingly enough, when Dan Rather was caught, I think he was fired, I'm not quite sure, but he left, and then he filed a lawsuit against CBS News, and that lawsuit was dismissed. But his response to this day is, that story may have been fake, but it was accurate. So he actually believed, ardently believed, that George Bush did try to get out of the draft and had helped in avoiding it. Yeah, but even if that's correct, that doesn't justify presenting false documents to prove the point. And I see the same type of mentality in the alternative media and the alternative financial media. The alternative financial media peddles its own false narratives. It does it day in and day out, insists on some of these narratives. Some of them are new, some of them are around for decades. And people who read the alternative media, they often think of themselves as being awake or woke because they read these stories and they point out that the alternative media is actually a great watchdog and pointing out the mainstream media lies and deception, just for example, like the Rathergate story. So the alternative media, I've always said, has done a great job of pointing out the mistakes of the mainstream media, the bias of the mainstream media, the false narratives that the mainstream media peddles. But they also, the alternative financial media, does a horrible job of producing their own false narratives and never policing those. So some of the readers who, not most, but a good number of alternative financial media readers, they often swallow hook, line, and sinker stories about imminent COMEX defaults. We've heard that one for 12, 13 years. It never happens. There's reasons why it won't happen, but no one challenges that narrative. They believe, well, that's a great thing because if the COMEX defaults, then the game is over, manipulation ends, and gold and silver soar. People want to believe that. Dollar collapse. Been hearing that since 1971, since the U.S. got off the gold standard. Soaring silver sales. Even if they're down, they go up 2 days, well, they're soaring. And tales of elites losing control. We hear that one all the time. I've seen that headline over the last 7 years, that the elites are losing control, or there's a silver shortage, or there's a gold shortage, or the near daily prediction that gold and silver set to skyrocket. This chart proves it. That statement proves it. There's always some reason that gold and silver are gonna skyrocket. Or in the latest ones, there's an evidence of an IMF plot to enslave humanity, that whole A-chain nonsense. Or people want to believe, some site says there's an upcoming significant date and that's going to prove to be apocalyptic, and of course gold and silver are going to skyrocket. Remember Shemitah? Or there's going to be some sovereign size gold buy that will shock the world. Okay, these stories come and go, and they're inevitably false. The predicted price rise never happens. But all these stories, they're out there, and they can continue to be peddled by the alternative financial media. Here's the latest one. China is launching a gold-backed yuan soon. There was a story out there, wasn't sourced, just said it is believed that China is going to do this, and analysts say it's a game changer. That story is out there as if it is fact. It was unsourced, but alternative financial media readers will insist that these unsourced or obviously fake stories are true. And they will hate you if you don't agree with them. If you attempt to dispute a fake alternative media story, you're a shill or a hater. If you finally manage to demonstrate that one of these ardently defended stories is false, they may respond, well, that story is directionally accurate, i.e. fake but accurate, like Dan Rather. I mean, the IMF is evil, and you can't disprove that they're not plotting with a Chinese ICO company to digitize all the assets in the world to enslave humanity, can you? And China is trying to dethrone the dollar, don't you know that? And they are going to be gold-backed digital currencies that are going to use up a lot of gold, right? And silver sales, they were up for 2 days, and some mine did close in northwest central Nicaragua, and there'll be less. See, this is the type of thing you get as defense of these stories, is that they are, well, maybe they're not true, and maybe they are fake, but they're accurate. Yeah, they're accurate if you want to believe a narrative that everything leads to soaring gold and silver prices. This argument of fake but true only works on those with a vested interest in the story being true. So obviously, if you're a gold or silver holder, you want to believe these stories. You have to believe these stories. But people interested in the truth, as supposedly a lot of the people who follow alternative financial media are, they're part of the truth community. If you are actually interested in the truth, you would not be satisfied with explanations like, besides, you can't prove the story is not true. For a story to be considered objectively true, the person telling the story is required to present unassailably true facts. If that storyteller doesn't prove the truth, the reader or the viewer of the story isn't obligated to prove the story false. Now, let's get into a dynamic between the mainstream media and the alternative media. The mainstream media only fact checks the alternative media when the mainstream narratives are challenged. Let's remember the presidential campaign of 2016. So the alternative media caught on to a lot of different things that seemed weird about Hillary Clinton's health. Alternative media stories said, you know, she might be physically ill. Here's what we think. And they presented evidence, they presented clips of Hillary Clinton making weird statements, looking strange, and then pointing out that maybe there was some type of detail around her that was aware that she was having potential issues, and the alternative media ran with that story. Now, when that happened, the mainstream media wasn't going to let that go. They went on the offensive, claiming fake news and insisting that Hillary Clinton was hardier than a hybrid bull during mating season. I mean, they had her out to be like she could go out and knock down the heavyweight champ, the way they were making it out to be, that this is ridiculous, that the alternative media would even suggest this. So the mainstream media, we've seen, they will inevitably try to debunk or get Google and its social media cohorts to bury any story that challenges a mainstream media narrative, like Hillary Clinton may be demented or Hillary Clinton may not be physically fit for the job. So the mainstream media will attack the alternative media when their own narratives are challenged. But when the alternative media makes fantastical unsourced claims or merely speculates and presents such speculation as fact, and such claims and speculations don't challenge or contradict the mainstream narrative, well, the mainstream media is going to ignore it. What do they care? If gold bugs wish to believe something's going to happen because of Shemitah, or something's going to happen because some Chinese ICO company is digitizing tea, or there was some story about gold-backed yuan, or someone said the COMEX was going to default, They don't care about that. They just ignore that because their narratives aren't threatened by that. So when the mainstream media challenges alternative media stories, as in the case of Hillary Clinton may be physically ill, the alternative media point of view gets stronger as the alternative media, in that example, is forced to factually defend its stories, not just repeat them. So we saw with Hillary Clinton when they said, well, that's nonsense, she's healthy, they'd find another clip of her freaking out in front of the camera and not being able to string a sentence together. They'd find another clip of her freezing on stage and having to have her handler come and hold her and get her back on track. So when the mainstream media challenges the alternative media, it's a good thing because then the alternative media can get its story straight, can get their story strengthened, they can present more evidence. But this is not the case when alternative media stories get peddled that are not widely challenged, such as COMEX default or Chinese backed this or silver shortage there or silver is going to go up because of this chart. And the reason for that is the mainstream media is not going to challenge them, but nor are alternative financial readers themselves. The desire to believe many of the claims that the alternative financial media makes is strong. After all, who doesn't want to hear gold and silver are set to skyrocket? And don't think for a moment that the writers of those stories and the people who run those websites don't know this and cater to that very desire. That's how they get eyeballs. That's how they get visits. That's how they sell subscriptions. That's how they get donations. That's how they sell you precious metals. So many completely false or incomplete or misleading alternative media stories go unchallenged, mostly because readers of the stories want to believe they are true and no one else cares enough to refute them. It's almost like lie to me, lie to me. I want to hear that story. In fact, I get comments on my website saying, why don't you promote gold and silver more? Well, because I'm an analyst, not a preacher or a cheerleader or a promoter. I don't make up stories or cherry pick data to make you feel good that you happen to own gold or silver or whatever else I might cover on the site. I don't care whether you buy or sell gold or silver or cryptocurrencies. I'm reporting on what's happening in the market. Now, I do happen to believe that there are reasons to hold gold and silver and even cryptocurrencies, but then I'll present them. I'm not going to promote them in the same way just to make up a story. And if I see a story that looks like it's promoting gold or silver or anything else on a faulty basis, I'm going to challenge it. I know people don't like that, and that's why I don't have thousands of subscribers. But I also know deep down, most people don't want to be lied to either. And they really are not interested in self-deception. So they tell themselves, or they're convinced that other people have said, well, this story was in X paper or X website, so therefore it must be true. But patently false alternative media stories that go unchallenged by consumers of alternative financial media do a disservice to alternative financial media in general and themselves. And that leaves the alternative media open to the charge of fake news. And as I said, I'm an analyst, not a preacher or a cheerleader. If you want 24/7 gold and silver promotion, I don't even have to name the sites. You know where to go to get that. If you want incessant cryptocurrency pumping, you know the people that do that, and you can go over there. There's many sites out there that'll give you that. I don't do that. If you want objective analysis of the markets, then you continue to come here to Smaulgld, Smaulgld.com, Smaulgld on VidMe, Smaulgld on BitChute, Steemit, Gab, YouTube, Facebook, wherever. The story's the same. It doesn't change on the platform. Thanks again for listening. Let me have your thoughts below.